When I think of the word editing, my mind automatically races to a Premiere Pro timeline strewn with dozens of little individual colour blocks filled with clips and audio samples, all ready for tweaking. When somebody like Michael Kahn or Lee Smith thinks of editing, they may think of physical film reels being developed and taken out the camera, stitched together, raw data in their hands becoming something so much bigger. Either way, an editor has to help tell a story. The script is written, the scenes are shot, and the notes are given. An editor is one of the final steps before a film, advertisement, even a YouTube video like this one, is presented to an audience. Now, a question has been running through my mind lately that I'm really interested in exploring. So much so, at the time of recording, I'm in the process of writing a dissertation about it. Now, my question is, have we, in recent years, sacrificed art for attention? Now, this overly pretentious title basically refers to YouTube today. I love YouTube. I love the amount of information I'm able to absorb from people who are down to earth, humble, and who only care about the craft and attention to detail.
I don't like freaky custom.
I told you, that is you don't want to hate that.
You know what the countryside is? You barely leave the house, you loner.
Okay, look, for every good YouTuber, there's a bad one. Or 5. Anyway, my point is I love how creative people can be with editing. Effects, transitions, story beats, all in a relatively new medium that is huge. But if we take a look at some of the most successful creators today, like some of the ones you just saw,
Stop!
No! You'll see that there is a common denominator between them. So much editing. Literally, the footage is taken and then absolutely pulverized with smash cuts, loud noises and pop-ups, all in the name of keeping you entertained. Okay, hold up. As I was editing this video, I realized I sounded a little bit too single-track minded. There are plenty of creators out there who don't rely on these editing techniques. I'm just focused on a specific trend I've noticed among a number of different channels. But in regards to my question, what gives? To answer this, we need to expand our horizons and consider that maybe this isn't a bad thing. Now, let's pull off a temporal pincer movement and reverse time all the way back to 1903 and meet Edwin S. Porter. Now, Edwin S. Porter is essentially known as the guy who created the jump cut. That is, the sudden change of camera angle in order to further tell a story. But to contextualize this, we need to go even further back to some of the first films ever made. Now, the earliest film of note is Le Voyage dans la Lune, or A Trip to the Moon. Now, this is by no means the first ever fictional film created. No, many more have come before that, but it is a really good example of what editing was like at the time. Now, if we watch this little snippet right here, we can see that, well, it's all from one perspective. Sure, scenes change and things happen, and it's all extremely impressive for such an early film, but I find it's more like a stage play than an actual film. The camera takes the place of the audience, and you're only able to observe from one perspective. Although to audiences at the time this would have been mesmerizing, but for us today, in current year, our general tastes just don't really cater to this style. Now, of course, stage plays still exist, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. Look, my point is we have moved beyond static viewing experiences. When watching A Trip to the Moon, or indeed any other movie from that era, to me it feels more like we're observing the action rather than being immersed in it. Edwin S. Porter helped change that. Now let's head back to the future. Sorry. Porter was a pioneer with editing. While earlier films did have cuts and even special effects, most of the time entire scenes were just one camera shot that lasted for minutes. Porter, after his camera accidentally halted recording one day and resumed moments later, saw how even though moments were cut out, the general flow of time remained the same. The action cut, and reality was warped. Edited. And with this new method, storytelling suddenly had a new dimension to it. Long shots to emphasize loneliness, cut to an extreme close-up to show how a character is feeling about it. The opportunity to have scenes with multiple compositions to tell a story with more than just acting. Tell a story with the camera work and the editing. Scenes could have multiple takes and different camera angles, so the editor could then have a choice of shots to use. What you've been seeing here is a montage, that is, a collection of clips condensed into one little short burst of information without much effort from your brain. In fact, if we stuck to one clip that whole time of me talking, you'd probably have grown quite bored, hearing me drone on without any cuts to maybe cover up my mistakes that I'm making, or any pauses where I can't think of what I'm actually going to say. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, montages are everywhere nowadays in some form or another. And they have a history. They were conceptualized by a Russian Soviet named Sergei Eisenstein. And while Porter developed the use of multiple camera angles in one scene, Eisenstein pioneered the use of quick cuts to different locations and characters and events, all within one scene. The effect could also be used to deliver imagery as well. Now this is called the Kuleshov effect, named after another Soviet who pioneered this particular type of montage. Show a scene, cut to another action, which could then change the original scene's meaning. This particularly gruesome example shows a cow being slaughtered as a group of soldiers chase after helpless protesters, gunning them down. And yes, throughout history there are uses of montage to present imagery, but as I showed you earlier, they could also be used to give you lots and lots of information in a short amount of time. They also pose the perfect way to pick up the pace of a piece. Need to show someone hard at work? Montage. Need to show the passing of time on a slow day? Montage. Need to cut out your boring ums and ahs so people don't get bored of your vlog? Montage. You remember that era of YouTube? I remember. But we're not quite there yet. So let's flash forward all the way back to... sorry for that 80s montage, I just couldn't help myself. Everyone knows what the 80s were like, right? Fast cars, stockbrokers, lots of drugs, and some big steps for Hollywood. At least that's how it's depicted in films, often with montage. Lots of energetic and flashy stuff, right? Here we are in the era of post-classical editing, as dubbed by David Bordwell. The 80s are typically seen as the era of filmmaking where things changed again. While classical editing developed from the slow burns of the 20s and 30s to the huge epics of the 60s, the noir thrillers of the 70s, those times are fading away. MTV was on the rise and popular with all the hip young teens at the time, and it seemed the creators of a few films around this era took note of that. Along came Flashdance, a pretty poorly received film about a teenage girl who broke the rules of dancing. It was flashy, risque, avant-garde, and absolutely panned by critics. Time dubbed it as having MTV-Style Editing, where flashy cuts took the place of a decent script. Does that ring a bell again?
I've drawn the watch and of
yeah.
course the logo.
But despite this, more films followed suit. Purple Rain, Footloose, and the pace picked up again. While films of the 20s experimented with the use of multiple camera angles in one scene, many films of the 80s experimented with quick cuts and urgent editing. And we just kind of went along with it because, let's face it, it's fun. And as technology improved and expertise became more common, we blazed into the modern era, where if you compare the films from the 60s to films of the past couple of decades, it's night and day.
There is something that I am very interested to know. This room looks very... What happened? What?
This is weird. Why did you take out...
We have so much more room to work with now, and with the rise of digital editing, it became a lot cheaper and more convenient as well.
I'd say there's potential.
We're in the early 2000s now, and along comes Google Video, Newgrounds, MySpace. Places where people can upload their homemade content to the World Wide Web to be seen by, thousands. And then YouTube comes along, blows its competition out of the water, and suddenly there are dozens, hundreds, thousands, and now millions of people putting their content out there, competing against the next guy. Now let's head back to the main question. If we take a look back at the trends I've discussed in this video, experimenting with multiple camera angles, use of montage, quick cuts, I think YouTube content is the epitome of that. If you don't keep people entertained, then you don't prevent them from clicking onto the next video and you lose out. This editing style is paramount now, and it's for the sake of people's livelihoods. So the big question, have we sacrificed art for attention? Is YouTube a problem, where we've moved to flashier editing, losing substance and losing attention spans in the process? Well, I think the answer lies with a person's intent. Creators like Peter McKinnon, for example, create movies every week. They're definitely not conventional movies, but it shows how dedicated he is to the craft. Casey Neistat used to upload movies every single day, and we all know how much he loves making videos and working with camera tech. But then you know who else uploaded short movies every day?
It's every day, bro. Disney Channel flow. 5 mil on YouTube in 6 months.
Oh yeah, Jake Paul. Same with his brother. But then Logan Paul's editor is renowned for how skilled and knowledgeable he is with editing. In fact, he has an entire series dedicated to it. He knows about the craft, but he also knows the way YouTube audiences work. The water is getting awfully muddy here. We have an editor who cares about the art, but also needs to please the YouTube audience, which in itself is an art form. I bet you didn't think this question was going to get this complex. So what can we draw from this? Well, maybe art hasn't quite been sacrificed. Maybe instead it's, well, evolving. The art is no longer nuance as it's traditionally known, but instead the nuance of keeping people hooked. The art has evolved, perhaps. And something I'd like to ask you as the audience. Videos from morgues or guava juice? Yes, they're flashy and loud and annoying.
Cheese fondue, cheese fondue.
But are there any editing mistakes? It's not like wrong takes are used or unintentional goofs or render errors are kept in. Go away. Then compare to a Casey Neistat video. There are numerous instances where he might be talking about a product, but as he's explaining it, the clip cuts out, interrupting his speech.
I'm at a hotel on a cool beach and it doesn't really work pointing my camera. The drone can give you context that otherwise couldn't.
We have this guy who's dedicated to his craft, but then he leaves these blatant editing errors in.
It was disorienting, it was always a little claustrophobic. So what I try to do is have an equal amount.
Does he not care? But then we forgive him because he's Casey Neistat. Now, side note, his explanation is that once you get the gist of what he's talking about, it cuts out just before you get bored. It's almost like he's satirizing modern editing. Now that's nuanced. So, to conclude, are we sacrificing art for attention? Has urgency taken a toll on nuance? And has history repeated itself from the 80s? Have we disregarded the pioneering works from the early 20th century? And are we doomed as a society? No. Look, on the surface, it's easy to say that, yes, we have. We don't have the intricate and slow burn editing style from decades gone by anymore. YouTube videos, oh, they're all flashy and thoughtless in their editing and blah blah blah. And that was what my initial worry was, and it made me ask this question. But looking at how things have developed since the inception of editing, montages, experimenting with camera angles, timing cuts with beats in a song, like I say, I think YouTube is the epitome of that. And if creators intentionally craft their work to have engaging editing and the editors implement techniques to keep you hooked, I have to personally conclude that no, we haven't sacrificed art for attention. Attention is gained from an art that is merely developed. Creative voices having their say both on camera and in the cutting room after. Is history repeating itself? Yes. And I'm all for it.